My name is Arden, and I'm 33 years old. I'm telling you this story not because I'm proud of how it ended, but because sometimes the truth finds its own way to the surface. Even when you've stopped looking for it. It was a Tuesday afternoon in March when I found the receipt. Not tucked away in a pocket or hidden in a wallet, but sitting right there on our kitchen counter, face up, like it had nothing to hide. Cartier, 2 matching platinum bands. 8400. I stood there with a dish towel in my hand, still damp from washing our lunch plates, and felt something crack open inside my chest. Not my heart, that would come later. This was something quieter. The sound of a door closing that you didn't even know was open. My husband, ex-husband now, but back then he was still mine, walked in carrying grocery bags. His name was Joel, 41 years old, sandy brown hair that was just starting to thin at the crown, the kind of man who looked good in a suit and knew it. He'd been a commercial real estate broker for 15 years, successful enough that I'd been able to quit my nursing job 2 years into our marriage to focus on starting a family. That was 7 years ago. We never did have children, not for lack of trying. "Hey babe," he said, setting the bags on the counter. His eyes flicked to the receipt, then to my face, and I watched something shift in his expression. Not guilt exactly, more like resignation. "Joel," I said quietly, "whose rings are these?" He didn't answer right away. He started unpacking groceries, milk in the fridge, bread on the counter, apples in the bowl, like if he just kept moving, the question would dissolve into the ordinary rhythm of our afternoon. "Joel, they're for a client," he said finally. "Anniversary gift." He asked me to pick them up. I wanted to believe him. God, I wanted to believe him so badly that I felt it like a physical ache in my throat. But I'd been married to this man for 9 years. I knew when he was lying. It was in the way he wouldn't meet my eyes, the way his jaw tightened just slightly on the left side. "Which client?" I asked. "Does it matter?" "Yes." He sighed, running a hand through his hair. "Arden, don't do this." "Don't do what?" "Ask questions." "Joel, these are wedding bands. Expensive ones. And you're telling me I'm telling you it's not what you think." His voice was sharp now, defensive. "Can we not turn this into some big dramatic thing? I've had a long day." That's when I knew. Not because of what he said, but because of what he didn't say. He didn't laugh it off. Didn't show me the client's name or pull up an email confirming the request. He just stood there, irritated that I'd found out, waiting for me to let it go. I set down the dish towel very carefully. "I want the truth, Arden, now." The silence that followed felt like falling. Like that moment in a dream where you step off a ledge and hang there, suspended, before gravity remembers you exist. "Her name is Simone," he said finally. "She works in my office. It's been 6 months. 6 months. Half a year of coming home to me, kissing me goodnight, asking what I wanted for dinner. Half a year of lies folded so neatly into our daily routine that I hadn't seen a single seam. "Are you leaving me?" My voice didn't sound like mine. It was too calm, too distant. "I don't know," he said. "I need time to think." "Time to think," I repeated. "You've been sleeping with someone else for 6 months, and you need time to think." "It's not that simple." "It really is, Joel. It really is." He left that night, packed a bag while I sat on our bed watching him, too numb to cry. He took his good suits, his running shoes, his electric toothbrush, the things that mattered to him. He didn't take the framed photo on his nightstand, the one from our honeymoon in Napa, both of us sunburned and grinning, my head on his shoulder. I stared at that photo for a long time after he left, trying to remember when we'd stopped being those people, trying to pinpoint the exact moment love had curdled into convenience, and convenience into contempt. I couldn't find it. That's the thing about endings, they don't announce themselves. They just accumulate, one small betrayal at a time, until you wake up one day and realize you've been living in the wreckage for months without noticing. The first week after Joel left, I didn't tell anyone. I went to work at the clinic, smiled at patients, administered vaccines and prescribed antibiotics, and came home to an empty house that echoed with absence. I ordered takeout. I didn't eat. I scrolled through our old photos until 3 in the morning, looking for clues I'd missed. I called his phone just to hear his voicemail message, then hung up before the beep. I was unraveling. And I was doing it quietly, because I didn't know how to do it any other way. My mother called on Sunday. She lived in Phoenix now, had moved there after my father died 6 years ago. She called every Sunday at exactly 2 p.m., reliable as clockwork. "How are you, sweetheart?" she asked, her voice warm and familiar. "I'm good, Mom. And Joel?" I opened my mouth to tell her, to say the words out loud and make them real. But something stopped me. Maybe it was pride. Maybe it was shame. Maybe I just wasn't ready to hear her say "I told you so." Even though she'd never say it that way, my mother had never loved Joel, not the way she was supposed to love a son-in-law. She'd been polite, gracious even, but I'd seen the doubt in her eyes on my wedding day. The way she'd hugged me just a little too long, like she was trying to absorb whatever pain might come. "He's fine," I said. "Busy with work. You sound tired." "Just a long week." We talked for 20 minutes about nothing: her book club, my cousin's new baby, the weather in Phoenix. Normal things. Safe things. When we hung up, I sat on the couch and cried until my ribs hurt. I told Mallory on day 10, not because I was ready, but because she showed up at my door unannounced with Chinese food and wouldn't leave until I let her in. "Okay. What's going on?" she said, setting containers on my coffee table. "You've been dodging my texts all week, and you look like you haven't slept in days." "I'm fine, Arden." I said I'm fine. "And I'm saying you're full of shit. Talk to me." So I did. I told her everything. The receipt, the confession, the way Joel had packed his bags like he was going on a business trip. The way I'd been sleeping in our bed alone, staring at the ceiling, wondering what I'd done wrong. Mallory listened without interrupting. When I finished, she pulled me into a hug so tight I could barely breathe. "I'm going to kill him," she said into my hair. "Please don't. I can't afford bail money. I'm serious." "What kind of coward does this?" "6 months, Arden. 6 months of lying to your face." "I know. And he has the audacity to say he needs time to think? Like here's some backup option he can keep on hold while he figures his shit out." "I know." She pulled back, looking at me with fierce eyes. "You deserve so much better than this, do I?" The question came out before I could stop it. Because I keep thinking maybe if I'd been different, if I'd tried harder, or been more interesting, or stop. Mallory's voice was sharp. "Don't you dare do that to yourself. This is not about you. This is about him being a selfish, insecure man who got bored and went looking for validation in some 20-something's bed." "She's 26, I said quietly. I looked her up on LinkedIn. "Oh, honey, she's beautiful. And young. And she probably laughs at all his jokes and doesn't nag him about taking out the trash or going to bed at a reasonable hour. She also doesn't know him like you do. She doesn't know that he snores, or that he's terrible with money, or that he'll do the same thing to her eventually." I wanted to believe her, but sitting there in my living room, surrounded by the ruins of my marriage, it was hard to believe anything good about myself. The divorce was fast. Surprisingly fast. Joel hired a lawyer within 3 days of leaving. I got the paperwork a week later, official documents requesting dissolution of marriage, citing irreconcilable differences. Irreconcilable differences. Such a clinical term for I fell in love with someone else and didn't have the decency to end things before I started something new. Joel's lawyer was efficient and cold. A woman named Patricia Herrera who wore power suits and spoke in clipped sentences. She called me twice to explain the settlement terms. We'd been married in California, a community property state, so everything got split down the middle. The house we'd bought 3 years ago in Eagle Rock, the savings account, his $401,000. Even the furniture got divided up like we were roommates who couldn't stand each other anymore, which, I suppose we were. I hired my own lawyer, a kind man named Robert Chen who'd handled my parents' estate after my father died. He walked me through everything with patience, never making me feel stupid for asking questions. "You could contest this," he said during one meeting. "Push for more based on the infidelity. California is a no-fault state, but we could still make arguments about no," I said. "I just want it to be over." "Are you sure?" "You're entitled to, I'm sure." Because the truth was, I didn't want to fight. Fighting meant prolonging things. Meant more meetings and phone calls and court dates where I'd have to sit across from Joel and pretend I felt nothing. I wanted out. I wanted to take whatever I could carry and start building something new. The house sold quickly. We'd bought it at a good time, right before prices started climbing, and even with the market cooling down, we made a profit. My half came to $180,000. Combined with my share of our savings and his retirement account, I walked away with just over $2,500. It should have felt like winning. Instead, it felt like a payout for 9 years of my life. I moved into a small one-bedroom apartment in Pasadena, near Old Town. It had hardwood floors and big windows that let into much light. I bought second-hand furniture, a blue velvet couch from an estate sale, a wooden coffee table with someone else's initials carved into one leg, mismatched plates from Goodwill. I was 32 years old, and I was starting from scratch. My best friend Mallory helped me unpack. She took 2 days off from her job as a physical therapist to paint my bedroom walls a soft gray and hang curtains in the living room. We ordered pizza and drank wine straight from the bottle, sitting on my new couch and planning my new life like it was something exciting instead of terrifying. "You know what you need?" she said, holding up a corkscrew like a weapon. "Wine, therapy, and a dating app, in that order, simultaneously if possible." I smiled despite myself. "I'm not ready to date. I didn't say you had to sleep with anyone. I said you need to remember that you're a catch. That man took 9 years of your life and traded you in for some office bimbo. The best revenge is living well." "I don't want revenge," I said quietly. "I just want to stop hurting." Mallory set down the corkscrew and pulled me into a hug. She smelled like vanilla and determination. "You will. I promise you will." But the hurt didn't stop. It mutated. Some days it was rage, the kind that made me want to key his car or forward those Cartier receipts to his entire contact list. Other days it was loneliness so profound I couldn't get out of bed. I'd lie there staring at the ceiling, wondering what Simone had that I didn't. Was she funnier? Smarter? Better in bed? Did she laugh at his jokes the way I used to, before I'd heard them all 100 times? I started seeing a therapist. Dr. Nguyen was a calm woman in her 50s who practiced out of a small office in South Pasadena. She had plants everywhere, succulents on the windowsill, a fiddle-leaf fig in the corner, herbs growing in terracotta pots. It made the space feel safe somehow, like growth was possible. "Tell me about your marriage," she said during our first session. "What do you want to know?" "Start at the beginning. How did you meet Joel?" So I told her. We'd met at a mutual friend's barbecue 10 years ago. I was 23, fresh out of nursing school, overwhelmed by student loans and the reality of working night shifts in a hospital. Joel was 32, confident and successful, the kind of man who seemed to have his life figured out. He'd approached me by the pool, handed me a beer, asked what I did for a living. When I told him I was a nurse, his whole face lit up. "That's incredible," he'd said. "My mom was a nurse." Toughest person I ever knew. We talked for 3 hours. About everything and nothing. He told me about growing up in San Diego, about his parents' divorce when he was 12, about building his real estate business from nothing. I told him about my small-town childhood in Bakersfield, about wanting to save people, about feeling like I was always one step behind everyone else. He made me feel seen in a way I'd never experienced before. Like I was the only person in the room, even when we were surrounded by 50 other people. We dated for a year, got engaged on a beach in Santa Monica at sunset, surrounded by tourists and seagulls. Married 9 months later in a small ceremony in Ojai. Just family and close friends. The first few years were good. We traveled Hawaii, Mexico, a 2-week road trip through the Pacific Northwest. We hosted dinner parties. We talked about having kids, about buying a house with a big backyard, about growing old together, and then something shifted. I couldn't pinpoint when exactly. Maybe it was when I quit my job to focus on getting pregnant. Maybe it was when month after month, the pregnancy tests came back negative. Maybe it was when we stopped having sex regularly, when conversations became transactional, when "I love you" became something we said out of habit instead of feeling. Joel started working late, coming home after I'd already gone to bed, taking weekend trips for client meetings that seemed to multiply. I told myself it was just a phase. that all marriages went through rough patches. I didn't want to be the nagging wife, the suspicious, jealous woman who checked her husband's phone or demanded to know where he'd been. So I didn't ask questions. I just waited for things to get better. They never did. Do you blame yourself for the affair? Dr. Nguyen asked. Sometimes, I admitted. If I'd been more attentive, or more exciting, or if I'd kept working. Stop. Her voice was gentle but firm. Joel made a choice. You didn't make him cheat. You didn't force him to lie. Those were his decisions, and he owns them. Not you. I nodded. But I didn't believe her. Not yet. I went back to work 6 weeks after the divorce was finalized. Part-time at first, then full-time, at a pediatric clinic in Glendale. The kids were a good distraction. Their problems were immediate and fixable: strep throat, ear infections, playground injuries. Nobody asked me why I looked tired or why I'd lost 15 pounds. They just wanted me to make them feel better. I was good at that. Making other people feel better. I threw myself into work with an intensity that surprised even me. I took extra shifts, volunteered to cover for other nurses, stayed late to organize supply closets and update patient files. Anything to avoid going home to my empty apartment and the silence that lived there. Mallory noticed. She always noticed. You're going to burn out, she said over lunch one day. I'm fine. You're working 60-hour weeks. That's not fine. It helps. Keeps me busy. Busy isn't the same as healing, Arden. I pushed my salad around my plate. I don't know how else to do this. Do what? Get through it. Every time I slow down, every time I stop moving, I feel like I'm drowning. So I just keep going. Mallory reached across the table and took my hand. You don't have to do this alone. You know that, right? I know. Do you? Because you've been pulling away from everyone. You canceled dinner last week. You didn't come to Jerome's birthday. Your mom said you haven't called her back in days. Guilt twisted in my stomach. I'm just trying to figure things out. Then let us help you figure it out. We love you. We want to be there for you. But you have to let us in. I squeezed her hand. Okay, I'll try. And I did try. I started accepting invitations again. Showed up to birthday parties and happy hours. Called my mother once a week instead of dodging her calls. Slowly, incrementally, I started rejoining the world. 6 months passed. Then 8. I started sleeping through the night again. Started eating breakfast. Started recognizing myself in the mirror. And then the invitation came. It arrived in my mailbox on a Saturday in late November, tucked between a grocery store flyer and a credit card offer. Thick cardstock, cream-colored, with my name written in elaborate calligraphy. Miss Arden Whitmore. I knew what it was before I opened it. You develop an instinct for bad news. Mr. Joel Whitmore and Miss Simone Keller request the honor of your presence at their wedding ceremony. The date was December 18th, 3 weeks away. The venue was the Roosevelt Hotel in Hollywood, the kind of place that cost $30,000 just to book. Black tie optional. I sat down on my secondhand couch and read it 3 times, waiting to feel something. Anger, maybe. Jealousy. The urge to light it on fire and dance on the ashes. But all I felt was tired. I called Mallory. She answered on the second ring. Did you get it? I asked. The wedding invitation? Yeah, I was about to call you. Are you okay? I don't know. Should I be okay? There's no should. However you feel is valid. I laughed hollow. I feel numb. Is that weird? Not even a little bit. I think he invited me to prove something. To show me that he won. That he's happy without me. Or maybe he invited you because he's still guilty and this is his way of seeking closure, by inviting me to watch him marry his mistress. Men are idiots, Mallory said flatly. Especially Joel. You're not going, right? Of course not. Why would I go? Good, because you don't need to put yourself through that. But after we hung up, I sat there holding the invitation, and I couldn't stop thinking about it. About Joel standing at an altar, making the same promises he'd made to me. About Simone in a white dress, believing she'd won some kind of prize. Part of me wanted to go. Not to cause a scene or make a speech or throw a drink, but to see it with my own eyes. To watch Joel marry someone else and know, bone deep, that I'd made the right choice by letting him go. To prove to myself that I was strong enough to face it. 3 weeks later, on December 18th, I woke up and made a decision. I was going to that wedding. I spent 2 hours getting ready. I wanted to look good not for Joel, but for me. I needed to walk into that ballroom and feel like someone who had survived and rebuilt. Someone who deserved to take up space. I put on my best dress, a simple black sheath that hugged my figure without being too tight. It was elegant, understated. The kind of dress that said I don't need to try too hard. I did my makeup carefully, winged eyeliner and red lips. I pulled my dark blonde hair into a low bun, sleek and sophisticated. I looked at myself in the mirror for a long time. The woman staring back at me was thinner than she'd been a year ago, sadder around the eyes. But there was something else there too. Something harder, more resilient. You can do this, I told my reflection. Mallory called as I was putting on my heels. Please tell me you're not going. I'm going. Arden, I need to do this, Mal. I need to see it. Why? What are you hoping to get out of this? Closure. Confirmation that I made the right choice. I don't know. Maybe I just need to prove to myself that I'm strong enough. She sighed. Then I'm coming with you. You don't have to, I'm coming. Give me 30 minutes. She showed up at my door wearing a dark green gown that made her look like royalty. We drove to the Roosevelt Hotel in silence, both of us processing what we were about to do. The Roosevelt was exactly as ostentatious as I'd expected. Crystal chandeliers, marble floors, ice sculptures shaped like swans. The kind of wedding that costs more than most people make in a year. We slipped into the back of the ceremony room just as the music started. 200 guests in designer clothes, whispering to each other, craning their necks to see the bride. I recognized some of them, Joel's colleagues, mutual friends from our marriage who'd quietly sided with him after the divorce. A few people glanced at me, did a double take, then quickly looked away, let them stare. I was there, and I wasn't hiding. Joel stood at the altar in a charcoal gray tuxedo, hands clasped in front of him. He looked nervous. Good, he should be. His best man Marcus, who I'd never liked, stood beside him, grinning like this was the happiest day of his life. And then Simone appeared. Drop your city in the comments, let's see how far this story travels. She was beautiful. I'll give her that. Mid-20s, petite, with that kind of effortless elegance that comes from never having had to fight for anything. Her dress was a custom Vera Wang strapless, fitted, with a cathedral train that seemed to go on forever. Her dark hair was swept up in an intricate updo, and she carried a bouquet of white peonies. She looked like a princess, like someone who'd been told her whole life that she deserved to be the center of attention. Joel's face when he saw her, I hated that I noticed. The way his eyes softened, the way he smiled, this private little smile that I remembered from our early days. The look of a man who thought he'd finally gotten everything he wanted. The ceremony was standard. Love, honor, cherish, in sickness and in health, till death do us part. The same words I'd heard 9 years ago, when I'd believed them, when I'd thought Joel and I were writing our own story. Something beautiful and lasting. Now I knew better. Every love story is just the same words rearranged. They kissed. People applauded. I stayed in my seat at the back, silent, watching. Next to me, Mallory squeezed my hand. You okay? Yeah, I said. And I meant it. I'd thought seeing Joel get married would destroy me. But instead I just felt empty, like I was watching a movie about someone else's life. Want to get out of here, she whispered. Not yet. The reception was in the hotel's grand ballroom. More chandeliers, more champagne, a band playing jazz standards while people mingled and congratulated the happy couple. I found a quiet corner near the bar and ordered a glass of white wine, content to observe. Mallory stayed close, a protective presence. If you want to leave at any point, I know. Thank you for being here, always. I watched Joel and Simone make their rounds, thanking guests, posing for photos. They looked perfect together. Young, beautiful, successful, the kind of couple that made other people jealous. I wondered if she knew about the other women. There had been signs even before Simone, late nights, mysterious receipts, texts that he'd delete before I could see them. I'd told myself I was being paranoid, that Joel wouldn't cheat, that our marriage was solid. I wondered if Simone told herself the same things now. Dinner was served. Prime rib and salmon, roasted vegetables, artisan bread. I picked at my plate, not hungry. Mallory kept trying to make conversation, to distract me, but I was too focused on the head table, on Joel's hand on Simone's knee, on the way she leaned into him, proprietary. The speeches started around 9. Joel's father went first, a tall man with white hair and Joel's same easy confidence. He rambled about marriage and partnership, about choosing someone who makes you better. He told a story about Joel as a boy, always trading up his toys, his baseball cards, his friends, always looking for the next best thing. But with Simone, he said, raising his glass, Joel finally found someone worth keeping. The room applauded. I took a long drink of wine. Simone's maid of honor spoke next, a bubbly blonde named Chelsea who'd clearly had too much champagne. She told an embarrassing story about Simone's first day at Joel's office, how she'd spilled coffee on her blouse and Joel had given her his jacket. Love at first sight, Chelsea said, giggling. Or first spill, I guess. More laughter, more applause. Marcus stood up, straightening his tie. Joel's best man, his college roommate, the guy who'd encourage him to play the field before settling down. Marcus told an inappropriate story about Joel's bachelor party, something involving strippers and tequila that made half the room laugh and the other half cringe. I watched Simone's smile falter for just a second, watch her glance at Joel, uncertain. He squeezed her hand, reassuring, and then, "Excuse me." An older woman stood up from one of the middle tables. She was maybe 60, silver hair cut in a sharp bob, wearing a burgundy dress and a pearl necklace. I didn't recognize her. "I'm sorry to interrupt," she said, her voice carrying across the ballroom. "But I have something to say." The room went quiet. That particular kind of silence that happens when people sense drama coming and don't want to miss a second. Joel and Simone exchanged a glance. Confused, slightly annoyed. "This wasn't part of the program. My name is Evelyn Keller," the woman continued. "I'm Simone's aunt, and I've been sitting here all night, watching this spectacle, and I can't stay quiet anymore." The ballroom felt like it had stopped breathing. 200 people frozen, forks halfway to mouths, champagne glasses suspended in midair. "Simone," Evelyn said, turning to face her niece, "I love you. You're my sister's daughter, and I've known you since you were born. But what you're doing here, what you've done is wrong." Simone's face went pale. "Aunt Evelyn, please no. You need to hear this. This man," she pointed at Joel, "was married when you started sleeping with him. He left his wife for you, broke up a 9-year marriage, and you helped him do it." Joel stood up, his face flushed. "Ma'am, I don't know who you think you are. I'm someone who believes in honesty," Evelyn said calmly. "And I'm tired of watching my family celebrate this like it's something noble. You didn't fall in love with an available man, Simone. You stole someone else's husband." The room erupted in whispers, heads turning, people leaning toward each other, phones coming out. I sat frozen, unable to look away. Simone was crying now, mascara running down her face. "You don't understand." "I understand perfectly," Evelyn said. "I was the other woman once, 30 years ago. Broke up a marriage just like you did. Thought I was special, thought I was the exception. And you know what happened? 5 years later, he left me for someone younger. Because that's what men like this do, Simone. They don't change. They just find new versions of the same story." She turned to Joel, and her voice turned harder. "And you stood up there and promised to love her forever. But you made those same promises to someone else not that long ago, didn't you? What makes Simone so special that she gets to believe you?" Joel opened his mouth, closed it. He looked like he'd been punched. "The first wife, Arden. I believe her name was. She was here tonight. I saw her in the back." Evelyn's eyes found mine across the crowded room. "I don't know you, dear, but I want you to know something. You didn't lose. You escaped." My heart hammered in my chest. 200 pairs of eyes turning toward me. Evelyn picked up her purse. "I'm leaving now. I won't be part of this anymore. But I wanted you both to know everyone in this room knows what you really are. You're not a fairy tale. You're a cautionary tale." She walked out, heels clicking on the marble floor. 200 people watching her go. The silence that followed was deafening. Then someone coughed. Someone else whispered something to their date. The band, unsure what else to do, started playing again, a jazzy version of The Way You Look Tonight that felt obscene under the circumstances. But the magic was broken. I watched Joel and Simone standing there, both of them pale and shaken. Simone's mother rushed to her side, wrapping her in a hug. Joel's father approached him, said something I couldn't hear. Marcus put a hand on Joel's shoulder. Around them, guests were leaving, not all at once, but in twos and threes, making excuses about early flights and babysitters. The exodus was slow but steady. I sat there with Mallory, watching it all unravel. Holy shit, Mallory whispered. Did that just happen? I think so. That woman yeah. Are you okay? I thought about it. Really thought about it. Yeah, I think I am. We stayed for another 30 minutes watching the wedding disintegrate. The photographer packed up early. The caterer started clearing tables before people were done eating. The ice swan began to melt, dripping onto the pristine white tablecloth. Joel and Simone cut their cake in near silence, smiling for the camera but with dead eyes. Their first dance was awkward, mechanical. She kept her face buried in his chest, hiding her tears. He stared over her shoulder at nothing. I finished my wine, set the glass on a nearby table, and stood up. Ready? Mallory asked. Yeah. We walked out of the Roosevelt Hotel with our heads held high. Behind us, the wedding continued, a performance for an audience that had already left. The video went viral by Monday morning. Someone I never found out who had recorded Evelyn's speech and posted it on TikTok with the caption, "Aunt speaks truth at nephew-in-law's wedding. This is what accountability looks like." By the time I woke up and checked my phone, it had 3 million views. Mallory called me at 7 a.m., breathless with excitement. Arden, have you seen this? Seen what? Check TikTok. Search wedding speech and you're not going to believe this. I found it within seconds. Watched Evelyn stand up in her burgundy dress. Watched her call out Joel and Simone in front of 200 guests. Watched the color drain from their faces as she spoke. The comments were ruthless. She said what everyone was thinking. The way he just stood there. Cheaters always get what they deserve eventually. I need this aunt at every event I attend. That bride is realizing she won a cheater, not a prize. His ex-wife was there watching this. Iconic. The way she said, "You didn't lose. You escaped." I scrolled through hundreds of them, and something strange happened. I started laughing. Not cruel laughter. I wasn't glad that Joel and Simone were being publicly humiliated. But there was something cathartic about watching the narrative shift. For months after our divorce, I'd felt like the villain in Joel's story. The bitter ex-wife. The one who couldn't move on. Now everyone could see the truth. My phone rang. Unknown number. I let it go to voicemail. It rang again. Different number. Then again. The fourth call was from my mother. Arden? Sweetheart. What is happening? I'm getting calls from relatives I haven't spoken to in years asking if you're the woman from the wedding video. I closed my eyes. Mom, I can explain. Is it true? Were you at Joel's wedding? Yes. Why didn't you tell me he was getting remarried? Because I didn't want you to worry. And I didn't decide to go until the morning of. There was a pause. Then softer. Are you okay? I'm okay. I promise. I'm flying out there. Mom? You don't have to. I'm already looking at flights. I'll be there by tonight. She hung up before I could argue. That was my mother, always rushing to the rescue, even when I insisted I didn't need rescuing. By Tuesday, the video had 10 million views. News outlets were picking it up. Aunt's brutal wedding speech goes viral. Woman calls out niece for marrying cheater. The wedding toast that broke the internet. My clinic manager called. Arden, I hate to ask, but have you seen the news? I've seen it. People are calling the office asking if you work here. One reporter showed up this morning. I'm so sorry. I never meant for this to become. It's not your fault. But maybe take a few days off? Let things cool down? I agreed. Spend the next week hiding in my apartment while my mother cooked elaborate meals and told me stories about her book club. She didn't push me to talk about Joel or the wedding or the video. She just was there, steady and solid. Joel called me Wednesday afternoon. I almost didn't answer, but curiosity got the better of me. Arden. His voice was tight, barely controlled. Did you have something to do with this? With what? Don't play dumb. The video. Someone posted it. And now it's everywhere. Was it you? Did you set this up? I sat down on my couch, cradling the phone against my ear. Joel, I didn't even know that woman existed until she stood up and started talking. Then who does it matter? She said what she said. I didn't write her speech. Silence. Then, quieter. This is destroying us. Simone's getting messages from strangers telling her she's a homewrecker. My office is a nightmare. People keep sending me links to the video. Clients are asking questions. I'm sorry you're dealing with that, I said. And I meant it. Sort of. But I didn't cause this, Joel. You did. You made choices that led to this moment. You don't get to be upset that people have opinions about those choices. So that's it. You're just going to sit there and act like you're above it all. I'm not above anything, I said quietly. I'm just done. I'm done being angry at you. Done replaying what happened. Done wondering if I could have saved us. I saw you marry her, and I realized I don't want you back. I don't want the life we had. I want something better. Arden, I hope you and Simone figure it out, I said. I really do, but that's not my problem anymore. I hung up before he could respond. My mother stayed for 2 weeks. We spent our days cooking together, watching old movies, taking long walks through the neighborhood. She didn't say much about the video or Joel or the situation. But one evening, as we were washing dishes, she said something that stayed with me. You know what I've learned in 60 years of living? She asked, scrubbing a pot. What's that? People always reveal who they really are eventually. You can hide it for a while, months, even years. But the truth always comes out. Joel showed you who he was. And now Simone knows too. Whether she accepts it or not is her choice. Do you think she'll leave him? I don't know. Some women do. Some women convince themselves it'll be different. That they're special. Were you ever tempted? I asked, after Dad died? To find someone new? She smiled. A little sad. For about 5 minutes. Then I realized I didn't want to go through all that again. The getting to know someone. The compromises. The inevitable disappointments. Your father and I had 42 good years. That's more than most people get. I'm okay being alone now. Don't you get lonely? Sometimes. But lonely isn't the same as alone. I have friends. I have you. I have a life I've built that makes me happy. That's enough. I dried a plate thinking about that. I don't want to be alone forever. Then you won't be. But take your time, sweetheart. The right person will come along when you're ready. Not before. Life moved forward in strange, unexpected ways. The video faded from the internet's collective memory within 3 weeks, replaced by the next scandal, the next viral moment. My 15 minutes of fame or infamy, depending on how you looked at it, was over, but it had shifted something in me. I'd spent so long feeling like a victim, someone who'd had their life stolen by betrayal, that I'd forgotten I was also a survivor. Someone who'd rebuilt. Someone who'd chosen to stand up and walk out of that hotel with dignity. I went back to work after the media attention died down. My co-workers were kind about it, mostly. A few asked questions. Others pretended they'd never seen the video. I appreciated both approaches. I kept seeing Dr. Nguyen, not because I was broken, but because I wanted to make sure I stayed whole. What do you want now, Arden? She asked during one session in early January. I thought about it. Really thought about it. I want to stop defining myself by what I lost. I want to build something new. Like what? I don't know yet. But I want it to be mine. I started small. Took a pottery class on Tuesday nights at a community center in Eagle Rock, even though I was terrible at it. My bowls were lopsided and my mugs leaked, but there was something meditative about working with clay. About taking something shapeless and molding it into something functional. Even if it was imperfect. I reconnected with friends I'd lost touch with during my marriage. College roommates who'd drifted away. Former co-workers who'd invited me to things I'd always declined. I said yes to everything for a month: coffee dates, happy hours, game nights, brunches. Some of it was awkward. Some of it was wonderful. All of it reminded me that I was more than just Joel's ex-wife. I traveled. Nothing exotic, just weekend trips to places I'd never been. Palm Springs, where I stayed in a mid-century modern Airbnb and spent 2 days reading by the pool. Santa Barbara, where I walked along the beach at sunset and ate fish tacos from a food truck. A tiny town in Oregon called Cannon Beach, where I stayed in a bed and breakfast and hiked through forests that smelled like rain and pine. Each trip felt like reclaiming a piece of myself, proving that I could go places alone and enjoy them, that I didn't need someone else to validate my experiences. I went on dates. The first was a lawyer named David who spent the entire dinner talking about his ex-wife and their custody battle. I listened politely, paid for my own meal, and blocked his number on the drive home. The second was a teacher named Miguel who was sweet but so nervous he knocked over his water glass twice and spilled wine on my dress. We laughed about it, and he apologized profusely, and I went home thinking he was nice but not for me. Profusely. And I went home thinking he was nice but not for me. The third was a chef named Lena who made me laugh so hard I cried and who kissed me goodnight with the kind of tenderness that made me remember what it felt like to be wanted. She was 35, with warm brown eyes and hands that smelled like garlic and rosemary. She cooked for a living at a farm-to-table restaurant in Silver Lake and had a laugh that could light up a room. We went on 3 more dates. Then 10. Then we stopped counting. I didn't rush into anything. I'd learned my lesson about moving too fast, about mistaking intensity for intimacy. Lena and I took our time. We talked about our past, her divorce 3 years ago, my situation with Joel. We talked about what we wanted, casual, serious, somewhere in between. We decided to just see what happened. No pressure, no expectations. Just 2 people enjoying each other's company. It was terrifying and exhilarating in equal measure. Mallory got engaged in February to a man named Jerome, who made her laugh until she snorted and who looked at her like she hung the moon. Their engagement party was at a rooftop bar in downtown LA, full of people who genuinely loved each other. I brought Lena. It was the first time I'd introduced her to my friends, and I was nervous in a way I hadn't expected. Not because I was ashamed, but because it felt like a declaration, like I was saying out loud that I was moving on, that I was building something new. Mallory pulled me aside at one point, champagne in hand. "So, Lena seems great." "She is. And you're happy?" "I think so. Yeah, I mean, it's still early, but you're happy," Mallory said firmly. "I can see it on your face. You look lighter, like you've been carrying around a piano and finally put it down." I laughed. "That's a very specific metaphor. You know what I mean?" "I do. And thank you for everything. For showing up at my door with Chinese food when I was falling apart. For coming to the wedding. For just being there. That's what best friends do." She pulled me into a hug. "I'm so proud of you. You know that." "For what?" "For surviving. For rebuilding. For choosing yourself." I hugged her back, blinking away tears. "I love you. Love you too. Now go dance with your girlfriend before Jerome tries to start a conga line." I found Lena by the bar, chatting with Jerome about cooking techniques. She smiled when she saw me, that warm, open smile that made my chest feel tight in the best way. "Dance with me?" I asked. "Always." We danced under string lights and Los Angeles stars, and for the first time in years, I felt like I was exactly where I was supposed to be. I heard through mutual friends that Joel and Simone had a daughter in April, that they'd named her Claire, that Joel had posted exactly one photo on Instagram, Simone in a hospital bed, exhausted but smiling, cradling a tiny bundle wrapped in pink. The caption was simple: "Welcome to the world, Claire Elizabeth. We love you." I looked at the photo for a long time, studied Joel's face in the corner of the frame, proud, nervous, already tired. Studied Simone's expression, relieved, hormonal, still trying to look perfect even in a hospital gown. I felt nothing. No jealousy. No sadness. No lingering what-ifs about the children we'd never had. Just a distant acknowledgement that they were living their life, and I was living mine. And those 2 stories didn't intersect anymore. I closed Instagram and went back to making dinner with Lena, who was teaching me how to make homemade pasta from scratch. That's when I knew I was really healed. When I could see Joel's happiness real or performed and feel absolutely nothing about it. Summer came. I turned 34. Lena made me a chocolate cake with cream cheese frosting and organized a surprise party at her restaurant after hours. All my favorite people were there: Mallory and Jerome, my co-workers from the clinic, friends from pottery class, my mother who flew in from Phoenix. We ate too much and drank too much and laughed until our sides hurt. Someone gave a toast about survival and resilience. Someone else told an embarrassing story about me trying to center clay on a pottery wheel and ending up covered in mud. I looked around the room at all these people who loved me, and I felt overwhelmingly grateful. Not for what I'd lost, but for what I'd found. For the life I'd built from scratch. For the woman I'd become. It was October, 2 years after the divorce, when I ran into Evelyn Keller. I was at a farmer's market in Los Feliz, buying overpriced heirloom carrots and artisan bread, when I heard someone say, "Excuse me?" I turned. The woman in the burgundy dress from Joel's wedding stood there, looking older in daylight but still elegant, still sharp. "You're Arden, aren't you?" she said. "Joel's ex-wife." "I am," I said carefully. "I thought so. I saw you at the wedding. In the back. And you're Evelyn, the aunt who stole the show." She smiled wryly. "I didn't mean to. I just couldn't sit there and pretend anymore." We stood there in the middle of the market, surrounded by people buying produce and flowers, and I felt an unexpected kinship with this woman I barely knew. "Can I buy you a coffee?" Evelyn asked. "I'd like to talk, if you have time." We sat at a small cafe overlooking the market, drinking lattes and watching people go by. "I want to apologize," Evelyn said, "for making a scene at the wedding. I'm sure it was uncomfortable for you." "Actually," I said, "it was the best gift anyone's ever given me." She raised an eyebrow. "I'd spent months feeling like I was the problem," I explained. "Like I was the reason Joel left. But watching you stand up and tell the truth, it reminded me that I wasn't crazy. That what he did was wrong. It gave me permission to stop blaming myself." Evelyn nodded slowly. "I told Simone the truth because I've lived it. I destroyed a marriage for a man who promised me the world, and 5 years later, he left me for his secretary. I wasted my 30s on someone who was never going to choose me first. Do you regret it?" "Every day. But I can't change it. All I can do is try to keep other people from making the same mistake." "Did it work? With Simone?" Evelyn sighed. "No, she married him anyway. Had his baby. Posts pictures of their perfect life. But I see the cracks. The way he looks at other women when they're out. The way she tries too hard to prove she's happy. It's only a matter of time." "You think he'll cheat again?" "I know he will. Men like Joel don't change. They just get better at hiding it." We sat in comfortable silence for a moment, sipping our coffee. "Can I ask you something?" Evelyn said. "How did you do it? Move on?" "I stopped waiting for him to realize what he'd lost," I said. "I stopped comparing myself to her. I stopped looking for closure from someone who couldn't give it to me. And I started building a life that felt like mine." It sounds simple when you say it like that. It wasn't simple. It was the hardest thing I've ever done. Some days I didn't want to get out of bed. Some days I was so angry I couldn't see straight. But I kept going. And eventually, I realized I wasn't just surviving anymore. I was actually living. Evelyn reached across the table and squeezed my hand. "You're stronger than I was." "I'm just tired of being sad," I said. "Life's too short." We talked for another hour. About her life, my life, the choices we'd made and the ones we wish we'd made differently. When we finally parted ways, she hugged me tight and whispered, "You're going to be okay. You already are." I think about that conversation sometimes, about Evelyn's warning, and Simone's choice to ignore it, and Joel's pattern that will probably never change. I think about the woman I was 2 years ago, standing in my kitchen holding that Cartier receipt, feeling my world crack open. And I think about who I am now. I'm 35. I live in a sunlit apartment with plants that I somehow manage not to kill. I have a job I love and friends who show up when I need them. I have someone who kisses me goodnight and doesn't make me feel like I need to shrink myself to fit into their life. Lena and I moved in together last month. Nothing dramatic, we just realized we were spending every night at each other's places anyway, so why keep paying for two apartments? She brought her collection of vintage cookbooks and her ridiculous number of kitchen gadgets. I brought my second-hand furniture and my lopsided pottery. Projects. We're building something. Together, slowly, carefully, with open communication and realistic expectations and the understanding that love isn't about grand gestures, it's about choosing each other. Every single day, I still have hard days. Days when I wonder what would have happened if I'd fought harder for my marriage. If I'd been prettier, funnier, more interesting. If I could have been enough. But most days, I wake up and feel grateful. Grateful that Joel left. Grateful that I survived it. Grateful that I learned the difference between being chosen and being settled for. Last week, I got a text from a number I didn't recognize. "This is Simone. I'm sure you don't want to hear from me, but I needed to say this. You were right. About everything. I'm sorry." I stared at the message for a long time. Part of me wanted to respond, to ask what had happened, to offer advice or sympathy or "I told you so," but instead, I deleted it. Not out of cruelty, out of self-preservation. Her journey wasn't mine to manage. Her realization wasn't mine to celebrate. I'd spent too long tangled up in Joel's choices and their consequences. I was done with that story. I had my own to write now. And it was just beginning. 3 months ago, my mother came to visit. We were having breakfast on my balcony, the one with the tomatoes and basil and flowers I'd learned to keep alive, when she said something I'll never forget. "You know what I'm most proud of?" she asked, spreading jam on her toast. "What?" "Not that you survived the divorce. That's impressive. But it's not what I'm proud of. I'm proud that you didn't let it make you bitter. You could have. You had every right to be angry and cynical and closed off. But you chose something different. You chose to heal." I felt tears prick my eyes. I had help. You, Mallory, Dr. Nguyen, Lena, but ultimately, you did the work. You showed up for yourself. That's not something anyone can do for you. "I'm still figuring it out," I admitted. "Some days I still feel like I'm pretending to have my life together. That's called being human, sweetheart. We're all just making it up as we go." We sat in companionable silence, drinking coffee and watching the sunrise paint my little neighborhood in shades of gold and pink. In the apartment behind me, I could hear Lena moving around the kitchen, probably making something elaborate for brunch. This was my life now. Small and imperfect and entirely mine. And I wouldn't trade it for anything. I saw Joel one last time, completely by accident. 6 months ago, I was at a coffee shop in Las Vegas, meeting a friend from work, when he walked in. He didn't see me at first. He was distracted, juggling his phone and a diaper bag and what looked like a to-go cup from another calf. He looked older, more tired. His hair was grayer, and he'd put on weight around his middle. He was wearing sweatpants and a rumpled t-shirt, the kind of outfit he never would have worn in public during our marriage. He ordered black coffee, large, and while he waited, he checked his phone with the frantic energy of someone putting out fires. Then he turned, and his eyes met mine. For a moment, neither of us moved. The coffee shop noise, the hiss of the espresso machine, the chatter of other customers faded into background static. "Arden," he said finally. "Joel." He approached my table, hesitant. Do you have a minute?" I glanced at my watch. My friend wasn't due for another 15 minutes. "Sure." He sat down across from me, setting the diaper bag on the floor. Up close, he looked even more exhausted. There were dark circles under his eyes and stubble on his jaw. "How are you?" he asked. "I'm good. Really good, actually." "You?" He trailed off, laughing without humor. "I'm tired. Claire doesn't sleep. Or she does, but only in 20-minute increments. And Simone is we're figuring it out. That's what parents do." "Yeah." He stared at his hands. "I saw your Instagram. You and that chef woman. You look happy." "I am." "Good. That's good." The barista called his name. He collected his coffee but didn't leave. Just stood there, uncertain. "I wanted to apologize," he said, "for everything. For how I handled things. For hurting you the way I did. You deserved better." "Yes, I did." He flinched slightly. I was going through something midlife crisis, I guess. I felt trapped and scared, and I made terrible choices. I know that doesn't excuse anything. But you're right, I said. It doesn't. I know. Is that why you're here? Looking for forgiveness? I don't know. Maybe. Or maybe I just needed you to know that I know what I did was wrong. That I live with it every day. I studied him for a long moment. This man I'd spent 9 years with. This man I'd loved and hated and mourned. He looked so small now. So ordinary. Not the villain from my story or the prince from someone else's. Just a tired, middle-aged man who'd made bad choices and was living with the consequences. I forgive you, I said finally. Not because you deserve it, but because I don't want to carry that anger anymore. It's too heavy. His eyes welled up. Thank you, but Joel, you need to know something. I forgive you, but I don't want you in my life. This conversation is closure for me. After this, we're done. No texts, no calls, no surprise encounters. I've moved on, and I need you to respect that. He nodded, wiping his eyes. I understand. And one more thing. Yeah? Whatever happens with you and Simone, and I have a feeling things aren't as perfect as your Instagram suggests, don't drag me back into it. Don't use me as a comparison or an excuse or a cautionary tale. You made your choices. Own them. I will. He left. I watched him walk out of the coffee shop, diaper bag slung over his shoulder, coffee in hand, heading back to whatever life he'd built. And I felt nothing. No lingering attachment. No residual anger. Just a quiet sense of completion. That chapter was closed. Really, truly closed. The best revenge, they say, is living well. But I don't think of this as revenge. I think of it as reclamation. I took back my name, my time, my sense of self. I stopped waiting for someone else to decide I was worthy and started deciding for myself. I learned that healing isn't linear. That some days you're fine and some days you cry in the grocery store because they're playing a song from your wedding. That strength isn't about never falling apart, it's about putting yourself back together. Again and again. Until the pieces fit differently but better. I learned that love, real love, doesn't ask you to shrink or pretend or sacrifice your entire identity. It asks you to grow alongside someone who's growing too. To be honest about your needs and generous with your forgiveness and brave enough to say this isn't working when it isn't. I learned that I am enough. Not because someone chose me. Not because I'm perfect or healed or have everything figured out. But because I exist. Because I survived. Because I kept showing up for myself even when I didn't want to. Last night, Lena and I were cooking dinner, her teaching me how to make risotto. Me probably doing it wrong but enjoying the process when she asked, "Do you ever regret going to that wedding?" I thought about it. No, I think I needed to see it. To know it was really over. Even with everything that happened. The speech, the video, the media circus. Especially because of that. It wasn't the closure I expected. But it was the closure I needed. She stirred the risotto, adding another ladle of broth. Your ex sounds like he's miserable. I think he probably is, but that's not my concern anymore. Good. She kissed my cheek. You're too good for him anyway. I'm not too good for anyone. I'm just right for the right person. And am I the right person? I looked at her, this woman who'd taught me to cook and to laugh again and to believe that I could be loved without conditions. Ask me in 20 years. She smiled. Deal. We ate dinner on the balcony, watching the sun set over Los Angeles. The city looked beautiful from up there, all golden light and promise. Somewhere in that sprawl, Joel was probably changing diapers and trying to calm a crying baby. Simone was probably posting another perfect photo, hiding cracks behind filters. Evelyn was probably reading a book and drinking wine, comfortable in her solitude. And I was here. In my imperfect apartment with my imperfect life, eating imperfect risotto with someone who loved me imperfectly but genuinely. It was more than enough. It was everything. They say time heals all wounds. I don't know if that's true. I think time just teaches you to live with scars, to carry them without letting them define you, to transform pain into wisdom, if you're willing to do the work. I did the work. God, did I do the work? Therapy and tears and long walks and longer conversations with myself. Days when I wanted to give up. Days when giving up felt easier than continuing. But I kept going. And now, 3 years after finding that Cartier receipt, I can finally say, I'm happy. Not perfectly happy. Not without doubts or fears or occasional waves of sadness, but genuinely, deeply, fundamentally happy with who I am and the life I've built. That's my revenge, if you want to call it that. Not viral videos or public humiliation or watching someone else's relationship crumble, but this, waking up every morning and feeling grateful for my own existence. Choosing joy. Building something beautiful from the rubble. Joel took 9 years of my life, but I took them back. And what I built in their place is worth more than anything we had together.